This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you in partnership with ministryleague.com. We would love for more people to discover this show, so please rate and review us on iTunes or your podcast provider. Feel free to share on your social media and subscribe at benandtravis.com for the free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. We have two amazing guests with us today, Ray Reynolds, Travis Harmon. How are you guys doing?
We're good, but we're not too amazing. We're just amazing.
Just amazing.
Just two guys.
Just here.
Alive and kicking.
We're coming to you from TITUS Camp, that's Teens in Training for Useful Service, from the wonderful campus of Heritage Christian University, our good friends from Heritage Christian University. Right. And I've been here all week as co-director, which is weird to say and scary.
It's a scary thing when they put you as co-director.
And then Ben is here on a Wednesday. He's done 2 classes and a chapel talk for the kids at TITUS Camp. And always enjoy being here. It is a marathon. You know that you've been at TITUS Camp when you go home, Sunday to Sunday. And of course, I was here a few days early for the run. So I'm starting to forget what home looks like, but it'll be good to be there. I've gotten more rest this week than ever at TITUS Camp, but that may change once the videos start rolling. But we are here today with these wonderful guys. Ray Reynolds is, I guess, the co-creator of TITUS Camp. He's been a director for most of the existence of camp, all of the existence of camp. I don't know when Travis, was he a co-director?
He became co-director pretty early.
Okay. And then I was probably in the last 5 years joined that crew along with the ladies, right? Whitney and Stacy. And so, Ray, you're the preacher at Summerdale Church of Christ, Summerdale, Alabama, down there in L.A., Lower Alabama. And then Travis, what's your official role with Heritage? I know it's changed over the years because, you're just the man. So.
Man, I don't know about that. But right now, I am the Vice President of Student Services. So Pat Moon takes care of all the outgoing money. Robert Youngblood takes care of all the incoming money. Michael Jackson takes care of everything academics, and then basically whatever's left is me. So
there you go.
Any student issue, discipline, security, campus.
I think we all know how that feels in our roles where we are at churches, and that's kind of what we're here to talk a little bit about today. Some ministry things, and I was going to have our two guests, and of course we'll comment on that from time to time. Give us maybe some initial advice. So you have studied with someone, or maybe not. Maybe you're just the minister that's working in church, and you have this new Christian, this person who is recently put on Christ and is looking to take steps in maturing to be the minister that we're all called to be. Maybe a lowercase m. That may not be the best way to put it, but we're all ministers when we become Christians. I know I talked to Ray a little bit beforehand about things that he actually tells someone prior to being baptized into Christ, and I thought that was good. If you want to start there, and then we'll make our way to Travis's comment on that.
Yeah, sure. One of the things I do when I take somebody to the water to get baptized is I do 2 things. One is I make them confess that Jesus is the Son of God. I don't just ask them as an admission. I have them confess it. So I like for them to speak out and say, I believe Jesus is the Son of God. And then I ask them a few questions. And then when we get into the water, I try to remind them that it is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, Romans 6. So when you come up out of this water, yes, you are a new creature. You're clean. All your sins are washed away, completely forgiven. But you've also declared that you are an enemy of the devil. And so from that point, when you come out of that water, Satan's going to do everything he can to try to destroy your marriage, your relationship with your children, your friends, your workplace. As much as God wants to protect you and put a hedge around you, the devil is going to do everything he can to rip it down. So I tell him, this is a declaration of war. And I tell him that not to scare him, but just to remind him that this is another reason why you need the church family. You need people around you that are going to fight with you. You need to get into the Word of God because that's where you learn about the armor you're supposed to wear. And you need to pray because that's how you're taking, from Ephesians 6, that's how you communicate with your commander-in-chief. So I really try to focus on, now that you're out of sin, how do you stay away from sin? How can you conform to the image of Jesus? How can you be daily sacrifice? And so when they come up out of the water, we sing happy birthday, because it is their spiritual birthday. And then immediately try to get them whatever tools we can to help them. Bible helps, books. I try to do counseling with them after the fact to make sure things are going okay. You don't want to just drop them as soon as they come out of the water and go, hey, good luck to you. So
I think that's a temptation. I think we've all seen that in church work. Even in our own lives, it's oftentimes we kind of expect someone else to come along and guide them.
Or we almost see it as a finish line instead of a starting line. It's like we got them there. We finally, we were praying about that, working so hard for that. We got them to that point. It's like, yeah, good victory, guys. High fives. And then, there's nothing else, where it's really the starting line.
That's where the race begins.
Kind of place like camp, they're having this week, they might choose to give their life to Christ, and it's kind of a culture shock when they go back and they're like, oh, I'm not surrounded by people all the time, 24/7, and so I can imagine as a Christian it was difficult to come back on that Saturday and not be ill with everyone because I was tired, but much less, hey, I'm a brand new Christian. And then I'm back to the world. But, Travis, anything you want to add to that? By the way, this is Travis Wade Harmon. I'm Travis Wade Creasy. So thankfully our voices are different right now.
Yeah. Actually, when I heard you ask the question earlier, I started thinking about is this a hypothetical or in reality? And in reality, I do something very similar. I almost always grab them right afterwards, and I'll say something to the effect of, hey, the devil had you before. He doesn't have you now. He's going to come after you. And I don't know that it's ever harder to be a Christian than right after you respond to invitation or right after you are baptized. And I usually will tell them this too. Like, I don't know how many times in my life I've seen a kid responds to the invitation on Tuesday night at camp and we send him home on Thursday night because the devil is after you. And I almost always will grab a camper that responds to the invitation and will tell them, hey, you really got to be on guard because you're recommitting your life to God, and the devil's going to come after you. And he just doesn't work the way that I wish he worked. The devil
shriek back into the shadows.
Well, the devil doesn't come. The devil doesn't come to like a 15-year-old kid in a big red suit with his little hooves and be like, you're gonna say a dirty word, and take his little hooves and force the kid to say a dirty word. The devil doesn't like
Satan has hooves.
Yeah. He doesn't like duct tape you down and be like, pour a beer in your mouth. Your brother hands you your first beer. Your best friends are the ones that the devil puts you in a situation where you want to do something bad, where you want to cuss to impress them. And so I will do that. If it's a hypothetical, if hypothetically I bet you say, hey, you baptize somebody and you're about to leave and you're going to give them one bit of advice, I think the one bit of advice I would give them would be never quit. Never, ever quit. God, I think what Christians do is we release God from his promise. God's never going to release you from your promise to him. But I think that what I see Christians do is we quit. God never quits, and God never releases himself from his promise, but we release God from his promise. And as a new Christian, all that you have to do is never quit. All you got to do is never quit. But crazy enough, new Christians, we quit. And it is the last thing I would say really quickly would be, I really wish we would give the church advice right afterwards. I don't know how many people we leave without support. We do see it as a finish line. The church sees it as a finish line. Okay, they're a Christian now. That Christian, what they need is they need to be brought into the group and they need to be assimilated into the group. And really, I want to tell the new Christian, don't quit. But the church, a lot of times, once we baptize them, the church will quit on them. We need to not quit that new Christian.
So maybe for a church then, even if, let's say the minister or whoever it is that brought him to Christ maybe sort of saw that finish line and felt like it was there, they've probably got family members or friends who are faithful Christians who might not see it that way. So what would you advise them? Like, what are some things they could do to sort of help with that?
Well, the same analogy with the devil, the way the devil works. I wish the devil ran in church buildings with like 7 feet tall, big plasticky muscles and horns. And I wish he would grab our teenage kids by the ankle and try to pull them out of the church building. If that occurred, we would all fight for him.
Yeah.
But what the devil does is he works really insidiously. He just lets them miss a Wednesday night. And then he creates a scenario where they miss a Sunday night. And then all of a sudden, after about 3 months, the kid's gone and nobody fights for him. Now, what we've got to do is understand that's the devil doesn't face us the way he faced Jesus Christ. He came to Jesus Christ on equal footing and faced him face to face. That's not how he faces us. And I wish we could tell those churches, hey, look, the devil's after these kids, but it's all behind the scenes. And what you've got to do is you've got to fight in such a way that you're fighting the wiles, the tricks, the snares. And so we've got to be there. We need to walk with the kids and be able to say, hey, look, you see that tripwire right there? That's one of the devil's traps. But we're only there able to do that if we're there.
I think it's something that came into mind both times when you were talking, and first time sort of forgot to ask it, but the idea with Jesus when he is tempted, I think somewhat we have in our mind that big temptation that Jesus went through, those 3 temptations, and that was it. And once Jesus conquered those temptations, he was good until he went to the cross. But if we look at the passage, it says he left him, at least in one of the Gospels, for a more opportune time. Mm-hmm. And so maybe we paint a picture sometimes of there's these big things, like for Jesus, there was these big temptations, and then it was like, once you conquer them, you're good. You're going to be okay. But we forget that he said until a more opportune time. So every time Jesus was having to talk with the leaders in the temple or having to deal with his disciples, there were temptations with all of those things, to get discouraged, to get frustrated, whatever it may have been. But it just doesn't point those out in that big level like it does in the first 3 temptations.
To your point, I think about these guys who are, your Michael Jordans, your Nick Saban guys, that they win the trophy, and you ask them, hey, what are you going to do tomorrow? Well, I got a recruiting call, or I've got some shots to make, and they're in the gym and they're shooting, and they celebrate for a limited amount of time. And even really with Christians, obviously our life is a celebration of what God has done in our life, but it's immediate. What you guys are pointing out, that the temptations come, and and also Peter, get behind me, Satan. It's your brother who hands you the thing, because he doesn't see what's going on, and that is difficult. Your best friend or whoever it may be.
He's the best example of it, because when they come, I think Peter is ready to die. And he
said he was.
Yeah. And not only that, but there's only 2 swords. If you read all the gospel, there's 2 swords. Peter has one, and there's 2 swords in the whole group, and there's a multitude, and he swings it. And I don't think he's Zorro. He's not aiming for an ear. He's trying to get a neck.
Yeah.
And he gets an ear.
Nobody keeps their head in place when you're swinging something at them.
So
either trying to split it down the middle or cut it off.
Yeah.
I think there was one or the other.
He is ready to fight and die. He's ready to die for Jesus right then. The problem is he's not ready to face a slave girl.
Yeah.
And the devil isn't fighting with the multitude. And Jesus even said, this isn't the way we're going to fight. The way we're going to fight is when you go warm yourself by that fire in the court, and everybody's around and they're all looking at you, and she says, aren't you one of them? You're going to say, oh, who, me? And then the next time, I love Mark's crescendo, his this build up. Who, me? And then I don't know what he's talking about. And then he begins to curse and to swear. So we've got to be ready to face that kind of trial. He's not going to come and get to us on equal footing, and that's not the way he deals with our kids either.
I think too, the evangelistic part, maybe as much as it's been talked about as being difficult, it may be the easiest part of the whole process. The hard part is, a lot of our baptisms and conversions in the church are just our teenagers or somebody that's already there. Watch the statistics of those that are brought in from the outside and how long they stay. And oftentimes it's because they don't have that support system that they need. And so the evangelistic part, being passionate about, I love God. Let me tell you about what Jesus has done for me. I've been covered by the blood. I've been forgiven. That's the easy part. The hard part is the shepherding, the mentoring, the coaching, the encouraging, the edifying that keeps that babe in Christ from falling down and never getting back up again. So we maybe we need to do a better job in the church as ministers, teaching and training our people on how to treat new Christians. Like, for instance, I was in Idaho, and we had a new Christian, and I had made a comment about Moses, and he raised his hand, and he's like, I don't know who Moses is. And everybody's dying laughing. How do you not know who Moses is? Well, he didn't know. He never read his Old Testament. And so, I mean, I'm thinking, how do you not know the law of Moses? It's in the New Testament. But sometimes new Christians, they don't understand our lingo. And in the church, we do make it difficult on them because we have certain terminology. And so it's all about trying to integrate them into the family, adopting them. You wouldn't adopt a child or foster a child and put them in a room and say good luck. You bring them into the table. You at Christmas you get them gifts. You bring them in. You spoil them. You love on them. And we've got to do that in the church if we're going to keep them. So I think that's more, maybe even more vital.
I think about Paul's writings. I mean, how much percentage of it is keeping them in, and giving them the right perspective. And we have the benefit of 2,000 some odd years. Church is the church. Now, sometimes that can be, people assume things. We live in the Bible Belt. Well, I assume everybody knows who Jesus is, and that can be a difficulty to overcome. But I imagine being the new kid on the blocks, like literally in the first century, the new kids, that it would have been even more stressful in those books to go, okay, this is how you conduct yourself in these circumstances.
Well, we all have unspoken and unwritten rules in our family sometimes. If somebody just randomly comes in, they go, "Why? Wait a minute, why are y'all doing things this way?" Well, the church is the same way. There's just some things there that we have always talked about that we understand, and some people are just blown away, like, I have no idea what's going on here, even to the point of communion. I remember, years ago, you had a book that we would go through at Pine Hill back when we worked together there, and it was just the new converts class, and I mean, it was everything like that. Here's what communion means, because somebody, we can baptize them. They've become a new Christian. They're excited about their walk with Christ, but we may take for granted they don't understand what that cup and that bread.
Yeah, but even our kids that grow up in church, I mean, there are things
I
I got to Freed Hardeman. There's things I'm still learning why we do things a certain way, and being able to decipher between we do this because that's how we found it's expedient versus we do this because it's in the Bible. Is two very different things.
We do take for granted that the new convert automatically has the information we have. It's like
they upload it.
Exactly. It's like, oh, now suddenly I know everything we do. And you're gonna have. We've seen this when I've baptized people and brought them in. They're used to worshiping somewhere else or doing something else, and we have to kind of coach them through it and say, this is why we do this, and this is another reason why we don't need to get in such a hurry and worship on certain things. I know we're trying to beat a clock and beat the Baptist to the restaurant and everything like that, or the Methodist or whoever the church is next door to you. But we really need to take time with communion, with the offering, with our time in prayer and in song to explain to people, for visitors and new Christians, why we do what we do. And I do think a new convert class is essential. If anything, for 13 weeks, when I do it, it's 26 weeks. We do it for half a year. Wow. Because you've got to go over the Trinity. You've got to go over the church leadership. Is the preacher the pastor? Some churches have those kinds of things. So we talk about worship. We talk about relationships, brothers and sisters in Christ. We talk about what it means to restore New Testament Christianity. And also accountability. Like, for a new Christian, they can bring a perspective of the Bible that we don't have, especially if we've been raised in the church, and they'll go, hey, look, I was reading about fasting here. What do y'all think about that? Or I was reading about these kinds of issues in the New Testament church. And what about head covering and things like that? So it's good for a new Christian to bring that. It's just like a child can sometimes point out things that you're too busy looking at other stuff, and they want to stop and smell the roses and tell you what a cloud shape is, and we're too busy trying to get from one destination to another. So we need to slow down and spend time with them.
Jackson asked me when he was little, he was probably 4 years old or so, 4 or 5, and as they were passing communion, I said, no, you can't. He said, can I have some? No, you can't have this. This is for when you become a Christian, like when you grow up and you become a Christian. He said, I was wanting to be Spider-Man. So that there's probably some other people out there who are thinking, oh, well, here's an opportunity.
Spider-Man, if you're out there listening and you don't know Jesus, then we can help you out.
You can be both.
Yeah.
I really wonder if these topics aren't really super interrelated because, like, in the church, there are rules that we have to follow while we do what we do. That's Christianity, but there are also cultural rules. And then we have to develop all these cultural rules. And so the church becomes this club, and it's not a very inclusive club. It's actually created to keep people at bay and at a distance. And I wonder, but I have wondered before if we went to church and we developed a culture of expecting visitors. So if you walked in the congregation, if you did a whole walkthrough, like, okay, let's assume visitors are going to come. When you get on the airplane, it is very clear that the airline expects visitors. So when you get on the airplane, you get a welcome message, you get the instructions. There's a little thing in front of you that tells you how to do everything and how everything works, and you learn the rules and the kind of the culture of the place too. And I've always wished that we would do that in the church. Like, let's walk in with fresh eyes and create a culture that's welcoming. And if we created people who are at church who are welcoming, and when you stand, what we'll do is there'll be three of us and we'll stand facing each other. Well, what if we trained everybody don't stand that way? Why don't we stand where there's one here, and one here, and that leaves room for somebody else to walk up and join the conversation. These are head thoughts and the habits that we could integrate in that would welcome people into the circle. And what if, as Christians, you had somebody whose job it was to stand at the door and to actually welcome the trained? And we said, one of the things, they don't know where to sit. Well, why don't we say, come sit with me? And then when they sit down, if in the pew back, they pulled out a sheet that looked exactly like the airplane instructions. And it said, we take communion every first day of the week, and here's why. And what we do with it, we put the communion back in the tray. I'm a member of the church. I'm a member of the club. I don't know if I put it in the pew back, if I put it in the tray, if I'm supposed to put it in my pocket. So here's what we do. If we create a whole culture about sharing our culture on how to be a visitor and how to welcome a visitor, I think that what would happen is we would have more visitors.
I saw a neat thing where they had Bibles in the pew, and they made it a point that the Bibles had page numbers. Mm-hmm. So, turn to page 95, yep. I'm going to be reading from this. And not only was it on the screen, but and then they would say, that Bible's yours, take it home. If you don't have one, it's yours, it's your gift. Cool. I've seen where, the front row of parking spots were saved for visitors, the ones closest to the door.
So before we close out, I wanted to ask one thing, just because we're assuming everybody knows what TITUS Camp is. So, and I'm not one who's on necessarily the board or whatever you guys call it.
We can fix that.
You could.
Yeah. So, just give everybody a brief 1 or 2 minutes. What is TITUS Camp? It's different than Maywood. It's different than Wiregrass. It's different than your typical camp. So,
well, I started in 2004. I was an assistant director for the Bear Valley School of Preaching's Preachers Training Camp, and came back and immediately said, hey, we need to implement this at Heritage. So I met with a few people, and we kind of went over some ideas, and we started TITUS Camp originally just to be a guy's camp to train them how to do ministry and preaching. And then after 2 years, when we established a name, we added the girls section. It's only $25 to come, and that pays for everything. We raise $10,000 to $15,000 to pay for the rest. You get 8 days of training on a college campus from college professors in a great environment with the best people I know on the earth. And then the most important thing is all the kids get trained how to use it's public speaking and leadership skills. And they get polished up on their skills for public speaking. And on the final Sunday, it goes from Sunday to Sunday, they get a chance to go to a local church. And we have 8 host congregations this year. Sometimes we have 9, where the kids will go and perform or preach, teach their lessons on that Sunday morning. The girls will be in a ladies' Bible class. The guys will either be in a classroom setting or in a worship setting. And we feel very strongly, I know most of our kids are in Lads to Leaders or in some kind of a speech organ, maybe it's LTC. And so we want them to feel like this is a place where you can develop those skills, and it's not a competition. Every single kid, we've got 13-year-old kids that are going to be in the pulpit this Sunday. We've got 13, 14-year-old girls. But at the same time, we've got 18 and 19-year-old kids that have been through the camp from, since they were 12, 13 years old. We have kids this week from Micronesia, from New York, from West Virginia, from Ohio. We've got kids from Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia. So lots of different states, and most of the kids will come by themselves. They're the leaders of their youth group. They want to come and learn how to lead when they go home, and
awesome.
It's pretty cool. It's really the best thing I think I've been a part of my whole life. I just really feel like it's because we have great counselors and staff. We have the best of the best. We have
thank
really
you
good
guys
kids.
for what you do, and I know that I mean, to me, that goes right along with what we were talking about, preparing people.
Mm-hmm.
You're also preparing these kids to help those people, that are coming to Jesus, and helping them prepare to bring people to Jesus. So I think it's a really cool deal.
I tried to give you a heads up, Travis, but I know that Heritage is having an event soon.
Of course, I work at Heritage Christian University, and nothing that we do is more on brand than Titus Camp, because what Heritage is about it's just Titus Camp at the next level. And so Heritage, we really are about training ministers for the brotherhood, and we want to provide the congregations with church builders. I mean, that's really what we're about. And so this conversation is, man, nothing's more on point and on brand with Heritage Christian University than this conversation. And so appreciate you guys. I know that the school has sponsored your podcast, and appreciate what you guys do. Our big benefit dinner, we call it the Heritage event, is coming up. Bo Jackson and Home Free. And we would love for you to be there. If you want to buy a table, we'd love for you to buy a table and support the cause. Of course, you get the tax deduction, you get the break, and then we get the benefit, and we're going to use those funds to provide scholarships. Everybody who comes to campus to do ministry, we will provide for them a legacy scholarship. And so all they have to do is pay the fees. We can provide the tuition through that scholarship, and that's what we're raising the money for. If you're interested in that, check out our website, hcu.edu, Henry Charles Union, Edward David Union. So Heritage Christian University, hcu.edu. Talk to Pat Moon, talk to Robert Youngblood. Like I said, they're the income and the outgo of the funds. They can hook you up with tickets, sales, tables, or it may be that you just want to make a donation to the school. Man, you could be a part of our ministry by doing that. So appreciate you guys and what you do.
Yeah.
Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to make the plug and watch for the Rat podcast.
and I hear that if you have questions about the Heritage event, you can ask Bo, because Bo knows.
Yeah.
Bo knows.
I wanted to mention
We'll
too.
be so in trouble for that. No, he's coming to get us.
My website is RayReynoldsRap.com. On there, there's free sermon outlines, Bible classes. If you're looking for some material, there's nearly 100 study guides to download, everything from Genesis to Revelation and in between topical. So if you're looking for some Bible class study material, it's all free. Everything's free on there, and then the podcast is linked. Blogs are linked and all that good stuff.
Is the new
Reclaiming Hope?
Is the new convert one on
It's
there?
not on there yet because I'm adapting it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's actually a lot of material. It's 26 chapters, and but I'm gonna have it on there probably before the end of the year.
Good
And
deal.
I got a book on anxiety going to drop on there, and my wife and I have started one called Reclaiming Hope podcast. It's on there as well. So RayReynoldsRap.com.
Be sure to put the link in the podcast description. Go
You
check
got it.
those out. Love you guys. Like I said,
Love
some of
you
my
more.
favorite people on the planet right here in this room. Just need Whitney in here. You said.
And then you say,
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. Until next time, look for us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.